Good morning. I am very sorry that I can't be with you for your conference on mediation. Nothing would have given me greater pleasure than to have been with you today, but unfortunately that has not been possible. But what I would like to do is to give you a few thoughts on the subject before you set out on your conference agenda, which looks incredibly interesting. Of course, mediation has always been a subject and a possibility that looks able to deliver many benefits both to our legal systems and to our citizens and businesses as they try to resolve disputes and to concentrate perhaps on doing business rather than having arguments with one another. The whole point being that mediation offers the prospect to parties within a dispute to find a settlement themselves, to remain more in control of the situation than having to give the dispute over to courts to impose a solution upon them. And by leaving the parties more in control to find their own solution with the help of a mediator, it of course means that hopefully when you do reach a solution, it's a solution that both parties will accept and be able to work with. And that, in commercial terms, means of course that the parties may preserve their commercial relationship for the future rather than ending up unable ever to work together again and really almost hating one another. So mediation should be a win-win situation for us. But in some senses it perhaps seems rather strange, and this is reflected, I think, in the agenda of your meeting. Mediation is a free thing, almost outside of the normal legal state structures. And what are we doing? We're introducing a form of regulation or legislation into the concept of mediation, and also introducing lawyers into mediation. So are we almost going back on the very things that make mediation special and different from using the traditional legal system? Well, first of all, if we take the question of legislating about mediation, here in the European Union, we've always wanted to promote mediation, and initially that was done not by legislation, but in the form of a recommendation, so-called soft law, a recommendation to the countries who form the European Union that when mediation is used in their countries, certain basic criteria or principles should apply, but there was no actual law. When we came to look at this in the European Parliament, we felt equally strongly that it was not appropriate to legislate in respect of mediation. And some years ago I authored a report in the Parliament, and that was the line we took. Hence, I think as parliamentarians we were a bit surprised when a couple of years back the Commission came forward with a proposal for a directive, so for a law on mediation, because this seemed to fly in the face of everything that we had thought about mediation. But actually when you look at it and you look at the directive now that we have for mediation in the European Union, it's actually, I think, quite clever, because what it does is, as it were, clear the ground around mediation. It sets out principles to make sure that the agreements that you reach in mediation are enforceable, and of course that's very important to the parties. It sets out certain principles about the suspension of technical limitation periods when you're dealing with mediation. And it also sets out some issues about the quality of mediation and about the preservation of confidentiality for the parties. So it sets some baselines and therefore gives support to the whole idea and the process of mediation, and therefore I think, as it were, waves it on its way and allows us to develop mediation further. What none of us wanted to see was some form of legislation that would stifle development, in the sense that we know that mediation in many countries is a growing art or profession, very much probably a profession, and that we should be allowed to experiment with many different types of mediation in many different walks of life. And we do not in any way want to stifle or curtail that way of development. Then, secondly, enter the lawyers. Lawyers and mediation, in some ways it could be seen as sort of equal and opposite. Lawyers are very much used to guiding parties through a dispute, fighting with one another in quite an adversarial manner. Whereas, of course, mediation involves quite different skills of bringing parties together and trying to find a solution. But there is no doubt that lawyers, because of their historic and professional knowledge of dealing with disputes, have a lot to bring to this process. But it will be slightly different skills to those that we are normally used to employing as lawyers. But no reason why we shouldn't bring our professional skills to good use in mediation. So there we are. I believe for legislators and lawyers, we do have a place in the development of mediation, that mediation offers us many potential possible benefits, particularly where we work in Europe, trying to find a path to give access to justice between many differing legal systems and legal cultures, and that mediation can help us achieve this in a way that's beneficial for the parties and relieves a burden on traditional legal systems. So it should help us all, and I hope that your discussions will be equally fruitful and help you have a very successful and a good conference. And as I can only repeat again, I'm really sorry that I cannot be with you in person to join those discussions, and I hope that an occasion will rise in the future. Good wishes.